everyone, what we're going to be looking at today is simple interest. So the first thing you need to know is a simple interest formula, and there's a lot that goes into this formula. This is the one straight out of the textbook. What I want you to pay attention to is that there's actually two different formulas that can be used. For the purposes of what I do, I always personally use this one. So the one I like to use is I equals PRN over 100. So for everything I do in these videos, that's the formula I'll be using. The other formula you need to take note of is this one here, and that's amount equals principal plus interest. So the simple interest formula will figure out how much interest you've got to pay, but not the total amount you've got to pay. So that's why we have amount equals principal plus interest. Below it here, they've listed what all the things are. So this should be a revision. P equals principal, or the amount of money you borrowed. I is your interest rate. Now, we're not using I, we're using R. So it's your interest rate per year as a percentage. That means you can just take it straight out of the question, put it into the formula. And it's the time in years. We'll go into that in more detail when we do some questions, because you have to use fractions if it's not whole years. And A is your final amount, which is your principal plus interest. So going down a bit, have a look at a couple of questions now. Okay. So when we're doing these type of questions, the first thing you always want to do is work out whether it's simple or compound interest. So we'll talk about compound interest later on, but the language Nelly always tells you. So use a formula to calculate the amount of interest that Julia would pay if she borrowed $7,500 at 8.3% simple interest. So we know straight away that this is a simple interest formula question. What we need to look at next is the information. So we've got 7,500, 8.3%, and 5 years. What I'd like to do is actually write down all of the formula first. So simple interest equals PRN over 100. And I would like you to list all the different variables. Simple interest is what it is, but instead of writing it as SI, quite often we just write it as I. So we list them. We've got I, we've got P, we've got R, and we've got N. And we can go and fill in what information we know. So in this case, Julia would pay if she borrowed $7,500. So she started with $7,500. 8.3% is your interest rate. And she borrowed it for 5 years. So doing this shows us that the thing we're looking for is interest. So interest is your principal. Fill in your formula. Multiply it by your rate, which is 8.3. Multiply it by your time, which is 5 years. And we divide that by 100. Now you type all that in your calculator. You can use a fraction button if it's easier. And we do all that, and we end up with $3,112.50. Notice that the question only asked for you to calculate the amount of interest. That's all it asked for, so that's all we need to do. Because we like communication, I must say, it is good to end most questions with a statement. So we can simply write, Julia would pay $3,112.50 in interest. So that's something you can just write, no problems at all. And one more thing we'll have a look at in this particular video is this one here. Now, I said earlier on in other stuff we've done, you've got to be careful about knowing your time frame. So how many weeks are in a year, how many months are in a year, how many days are in a year, all those wonderful ones. But there's some less familiar ones. In this case, we have quarterly. So remember, quarterly means 4 times a year. So find the quarterly interest paid when Hassan invested $16,000 in bonds, paying 7.5% interest. So we always start the same way. Write down your formula. Write down the information. We know we've got 7.5%. Fill that one in. It's easy. We want quarterly interest. I'll come back to that. 16,000 is our principal. And we are trying to find out the interest. When it says quarterly interest paid, our time frame isn't a whole year. So we have to do it as a fraction of a year. So therefore, when we look at it, quarterly means 1 quarter a year. As another example, if it said monthly, you would write in 1 over 12. If it said daily, you would write 1 over 365. So when we look at this, we can fill in our formula. So principal is 16,000 multiplied by our rate, which is 7.5, multiplied by our time, which is a quarter, all over 100. So when we type that into our calculator, it should come out to $300. So remember our statement. Hassan gets $300 per quarter. Not bad, really. Good luck finding 7.5% interest on anything these days. Alrighty, so that's the end of this one.